Time now for Focus. Today we have a report from Brazil. A year after Zika was reported, the infection was linked to thousands of babies being born with underdeveloped brains. In August, the World Health Organization declared the Zika virus a global public health emergency. It's since lifted its emergency designation, but Zika remains a threat in the region. And Zika families are still learning about the disabilities of their children. Also, there's still no vaccine. Fanny Lotter and Rafael Luis Azeveda report.
Usually arid lands full of green in this unusually rainy season. We're in the northeast of Brazil. With 2,000 people infected, Ceará is one of the regions most hit by last year's Zika virus. It's also one of the poorest. But from Ceará came hope from a most unexpected source. The desks of this state school.
This is where we started our research to fight the Zika virus.
A few months ago in science class, these two teenagers wanted to study the virus that had affected friends and relatives. As a result, they may have found the vaccine.
We realized by studying the Zika virus that one of its cell proteins was responsible for the multiplication of the virus in the human body. And thanks to this software, we were able to modify this protein.
With the use of a simple free software and hours of tests.
We managed to modify this NS1 protein and stop it from spreading the virus in the human body.
Our work could be used to create medicine, a vaccine to fight against this virus that is not well known in Brazil and that causes so much damage to our society.
Thanks to their discovery, Milena and Gabriel will be visiting the United States to take part in the Intel Science, the world's largest pre-college scientific competition. Meanwhile, their molecular theory is being tested in this nearby university laboratory.
Heat rises and cold air sinks, so at the end our molecule will be extracted from here.
We produced their molecule, which will be the basis of a potential vaccine, thanks to a very simple synthesis process.
They hope that this vaccine sees the light of day within 2 years and saves many Brazilians from the virus and its consequences. At the Fortaleza Hospital, for the last year and a half, a whole department has been dedicated to children born with microcephaly, a brain too small for the child to develop properly. Here there are more than 200 cases of babies with the condition, a record number, like João Miguel, who's 18 months old.
He's doing better. He can hold his head.
Problems of motor skills, swallowing, later problems with speech, and a life expectancy shorter than the average. Every day, Dr. André Pessoa discovers new consequences and new cases.
80% of Zika cases have no symptoms. This means that you could be pregnant, catch Zika without having any symptoms, your child could be born with a normal brain, and later you'd realize that it actually has microcephaly. This is a possibility that's just been discovered.
He has come across more than 100 babies who developed microcephaly after birth. Diana Rebouças does not even remember being bitten by the mosquito. Well, now she's had to stop her studies and takes a 6-hour road trip every week to have her daughter treated here. Coping is not easy.
There are so many people who look at me, look at her. Even a child one day approached me and told me that my daughter was ugly. That's why I protect her.
If she can't return to her village, she sleeps with her father on the edge of the city in precarious conditions. She receives €200 each month to care for her daughter, barely enough to pay for transport and medicines. Lots of medicines.
I don't want to stay here, but I can't go home because no hospital can treat her. They don't even know what she has. She should have professionals around her. Even when I carry out tests, the doctors here do not trust what I've done.
Mothers who feel abandoned and a state reluctant to take responsibility for this health crisis. Well, in this country where abortion is prohibited, the Supreme Court had for a moment floated the idea of legalising it in the case of microcephaly. Then came the outcry. It quickly backed down.
You will learn a lot if you let these children come into the world.
Like this anti-abortion journalist for whom the Zika virus has helped give birth to role models. Ana Victoria Lima, 17 years old, became the first model with microcephaly in the world. Today, she'll be up on the catwalk in Manaus.
Well, I can't parade. I'm normal.
Normality, which became a sales pitch for a modelling agency.
By 2020, we will have many more Ana Victorias. And the government also runs after these people to adapt to this new market that emerges.
The government has already contacted her about a new campaign. In view of the decline of the epidemic, the World Health Organization has withdrawn the status of emergency from the virus. Even so, Brazil will have to find ways to care for this Zika generation for the rest of their lives.
For more on this, I'm joined in the studio by Yazdan Pana. He is Professor of Infectious Diseases at Paris Diderot University and the head of the Infectious Diseases Department of Bichat Claude Bernard Hospital, also researcher at INSERM. Hello, thank you very much indeed for being with us. Now, just how much of a threat is Zika still in, not just in Brazil, but in the region, in Latin America?
So what has happened is that we have the peak, the highest point of the epidemic behind us, that many, unfortunately, people were being touched by the epidemic. The epidemic in the Latin America and in the Caribbean has not completely disappeared, but the number of cases now are very low. Just to give you an example, in Guadeloupe, for example, the last confirmed case of Zika was reported in January 2017. That doesn't mean that we don't have some cases that have not been diagnosed, but the number are very low.
Is it still a region that women who are pregnant or thinking of having a family should be avoiding?
I don't think so. They should, of course, be careful, but I don't think so because, for example, in the Guadeloupe, the example I was giving, in 1 year ago, they had 2,000, 2,500 cases a week. The risk when you have 2,500 cases a week and when you don't have any cases since January is not the same.
Okay, so the peak, the disease has peaked, so to speak, then. The worst of it is over. But of course, as we saw in the report, there are still many people living with the consequences, if I can put it that way. Many Zika families who were just still learning about the consequences and the disabilities that their children will have to face for life. But also scientists still learning, I understand, then. That we don't yet know all the consequences.
No, we don't know. We have learned a lot, but we don't know all the consequences. Of course, we discovered all the problem with the children born from a woman having Zika, the microcephaly. For example, one of the things is that the proportion of microcephaly doesn't seem to be the same in the different areas. In Brazil, or for example, in Guadeloupe or in Martinique, it seems to be lower. Why? We don't know. Probably because there are co-factors. What we know is that there is a risk of malformation of microcephaly for the children born from a Zika mother infected with Zika. That the risk is the highest when you get infected during the first trimester of the pregnancy, but the risk is variable from one country to the other.
Now, I imagine this also varies from one country to another, but we saw that in Brazil, the state helps poorer families. There was mention there of €200 for one woman whose child has microcephaly. What about in other countries in the region, and what about NGOs? Is there still a big contingent out there helping people?
As you said, as you mentioned, we are now in the consequence. First of all, we should be careful because the epidemic is not completely over, although it's much lower, but we are mostly now in the consequences. First of all, not all the pregnant women who were pregnant during the Zika epidemic have not all delivered, so there are some children, unfortunately, still with malformation that are born. And the second thing is that, for example, in Brazil, there have been more than 10,000 cases of microcephalia. Other malformation, but it's not only microcephalia, so we should follow up these children. We should help them. Of course, there is not a treatment against the virus, but we have some care to give to these children that may improve them.
What about a vaccine? How far away are we from getting a vaccine?
So there are many institutions, many companies, many individuals working on vaccine. Most of these vaccines are at early stages of development. They are not that much moved through late stages of vaccine. So we will not have a vaccine before probably 2018 on the market. However, the vaccine has now been started to be evaluated in humans. The one who has been the fastest is the one by the National Institute of Health in the United States. And recently they have started a phase 2 clinical trial, which is to compare the vaccine against not vaccinating in individuals in endemic area and in particular in Brazil.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Yazdan Pana, for coming in from Bisha Hospital, the Infectious Diseases Department there. Thank you very much for your time.